One of the most simple yet effective tactics that you can employ if you're talking about the issue of evolution is to ask a question. It's a very simple question. And that question is, what definition of evolution are you talking about? So for example, if you're reading an article or you're talking to a person who is advancing a form of evolution, you simply want to ask them and find out what definition are they referring to. And let me give you the three definitions of evolution that are possible, and then I'll explain to you why this tactic is so important. So the first possible definition of evolution is simply change over time. Now, of course, according to this definition, this isn't very controversial. All this would mean is that simply things change over time. And that's not a big deal, right? I mean, clouds evolve over time on this definition. My backyard evolves over time. My children's behavior evolves over time. And so again, this is not a very controversial definition. But sometimes when people refer to evolution, they simply mean change over time. Now, a second definition of evolution is what Charles Darwin advanced in the first 5 chapters of his book on the origin of species. And it's known as the special theory of evolution, or sometimes today we would call it or refer to it as microevolution. And of course, microevolution simply means small changes. And in this definition of evolution, you have the ability of certain creatures and species to have small changes that occur over time that produce new characteristics. And so a couple of examples of this would be, or at least one of the most popular examples, is the finches on the Galapagos Islands. Over a period of a drought, when there's a drought, sometimes there is, as a result of that environmental change, the population of finches with large beaks increases and the population of finches with small beaks decreases. And so this is referred to as an evolutionary kind of change. Again, this is also not controversial. Sometimes evolutionists will cite the example of bacteria and how they have the ability to develop a resistance to antibiotics. That type of change is known as an evolutionary change. Even as Christians, we believe that the human race began with Adam and Eve, 2 people that had a certain height, a certain skin color, certain shape to their eyes and to their nose, a certain bone stature, body stature. And now as we look throughout the world, we see all different kinds of races. Some people with light skin, some people with dark skin, some people who are tall, some people who are dark, short. All different varieties of people, because there have had a microevolutionary changes within the human species to account for all the diversity of the races that we see on our planet. So this second definition of evolution is also not controversial. We see it happening in our world and we can accept it as Christians. Now there's a third definition of evolution, and this is the second kind of definition that Charles Darwin referred to. It's called the general theory of evolution, or sometimes we refer to it as macroevolution. And of course, macro meaning large changes that occur. And this is the type of evolution that we often think of when we think of Darwinism. It's the molecules to man hypothesis. Basically, it's like taking microevolution, these small changes, and extrapolating it for over millions of years to account for all the diversity that we see in life, whether it be plants or animals. So macroevolution accounts for the changes from, say, fish to amphibians, or from reptiles to birds, or from land-dwelling wolf-like animals to orcas and dolphins and whales. Okay, so this is macroevolution, as what Frank Peretti used to say, from goo to you by way of the zoo. That was his way of kind of referring to it. So those are the 3 definitions of evolution, but here's why asking the question, which definition of evolution are you referring to, is so important. Oftentimes, people who are advancing evolution equivocate on the definition of evolution. They'll refer and cite to examples of change over time, or microevolution, those first 2 definitions, and they'll say, look, these are happening before our very eyes. We see them happening on Earth right now, within our lifetime. So therefore, evolution must be true, meaning the third definition, macroevolution, must be true. But you see, this is precisely what's in question. Does microevolution, or do examples of microevolution and of change over time, provide proof that macroevolution has occurred? And of course, this is where we would say, no, this doesn't provide evidence for that. The fact that a population of finches that has large beaks can increase while the same population of finches that has small beaks decrease, that kind of change might explain the population variances, but how does that same mechanism explain how a beak might arise in the first place, or how a finch might arise in the first place? And this is why this question, which definition of evolution are you referring to, is so critical. Because oftentimes people are simply pointing to examples of microevolution or of change over time and thinking that that somehow proves that macroevolution is true. But that's precisely what's in question. And that's why this question, what definition of evolution are you referring to, is so key.